My name is Thomas, and this is Cross-Examination, where we try to see the forest for more than just its trees. Josh and Benny Safdie first came to my attention 3 years ago, when they held an event at my college promoting their latest film, Heaven Knows What.
At least read this after I die.
A day later, I was interviewing Josh for a radio show I co-hosted at school. The first thing I noticed was his peculiar way of expressing himself.
I keep a bottle of champagne in my fridge, and I keep an unlit cigar next to my desk. And I say to myself, one day when it really calls for celebration, I'm going to pop that champagne and I'm going to smoke that cigar. I'm never going to be satisfied, and I'm always going to be kind of achieving, because celebration is about reflection and nostalgia, and I don't know, I'm not really about that.
I found Josh to be a delightfully odd person, with a sincere confidence that was almost intimidating.
We've been incubating and making these movies for a decade now, and almost stubbornly so, and refusing to kind of engage with the movie industry in a weird way, just because we wanted to just make sure we had our language down.
Heaven Knows What is many things. It's gritty, frenetic, a spellbinding fever dream that broaches the nightmarish with the sincerity of a junkie looking for a fix. I found it to be undeniably original. To understand the complex alchemy that defines the Safdie canon, we have to go back to the beginning, to see how, through various surprising connections and fortunate turns of fate, all bound by a relentless knack for actually doing the work, these two brothers from New York established themselves as some of the most compelling young filmmakers working today. Let's dive in. Through short films, music videos, documentaries, and of course narrative features, the Safdies have honed their craft over the course of the last decade, sharpening the once blunt edge of their storytelling into a fine, piercing blade. One of the first things you'll notice is their visual style. It's distinctive, intense, sometimes sickening. It creates a feeling of surveillance, which gives the impression that what's happening on screen is actually taking place whether we're watching or not. It's a powerful, unnerving technique.
If you loved me, you would have killed yourself by now.
It's the kind of thing that can put your stomach in knots, and maybe that's the intention. To me, this unique craftsmanship is an acquired taste, but not like a fine wine. More like black coffee, dark and energetic, demanding attention. To understand their work, it's crucial that we deconstruct how they create this effect, and more importantly, why. Two techniques completely define the Safdie brothers' style: long lenses and handheld cameras. Over the years, I've developed a couple personal rules for these techniques. First, only use handheld when things are getting out of hand. Second, long lenses create a voyeuristic experience, so they're best used to mask unrealistic action as something that's really happening. The Safdies seem to play by these rules. And this being the case, it seems likely to me that their style grew out of their limitations. I find the look and feel of their films to be a function of necessity as much as art. It's not easy to make a film look like it was directed by David Fincher. It takes a mountain of money to pay a plethora of people for a ton of time. On a limited budget, an omniscient camera just isn't practical. Not only that, it isn't necessarily even preferable. Daddy Longlegs wouldn't be a better film if every shot were motion controlled. And it wouldn't just be worse either. It would be completely unremarkable, because the subject matter and themes would clash with the craft. The Safdie brothers' stories are best served by their observational style. They present a subjective, limited view of what's happening, transforming the audience into a supporting character. In the spirit of authenticity, they don't build sets either. They steal shots on the actual subway. They shoot in actual apartments, sometimes the same apartment for multiple movies. They even cast a real bail bondsman in his actual office for this scene in Good Time.
Yeah, you got the full 10?
Because at the end of the day, they know that you can tell the difference between what's phony and what's real. The happy coincidence is that this masks budgetary restrictions. But aesthetics alone aren't what make these guys special. Plenty of directors shoot this way, but not all of them do so in service of one single subject. Josh and Benny have essentially shot the same movie 4 times, each time using New York City as their setting. A wise man once said, "Hey man, perfection takes time." New York has been shot to death, but few have shown it with such sober verity. Each of their narrative films revolve around New Yorkers with little or no direction, who spend a lot of time talking to nameless people on the street. We forgive the repetition because the New York they create again and again is populated by engaging and interesting characters who do unordinary things. This is never more apparent than the case of Good Time's lead character, aptly named Connie. Connie is one of the most compelling conmen in recent memory. With each lie he tells, we're drawn further into his charming ruse, and much of the heavy lifting is done visually. You can watch the movie on mute and still see the progression of his duplicity and its consequences with impressive clarity. This kind of character development isn't as easy as they make it look. It's the result of months of concerted and grueling pre-production.
We were constantly communicating and, sharing pages of the script, sharing ideas, new things that we kind of wanted to flip around, and because the movie kind of changed around. It started off as more of a prison-heavy thing, and then it drifted into something else.
It does help that they cast people in roles which mirror their actual lives, such as in Heaven Knows What, where Ariel is reenacting events from her own past. This technique creates vivid and lasting characters. When it works, it really works. But if left unchecked, it can become a two-edged sword.
You musicians, you know how to play and sing? It's a disgrace. It's a perversion of the creative process and a violation of the silence of what it is to create. Have you ever heard Bob Dylan?
This kind of stuff can get tiring, and their older movies are liberally peppered with it. These days, scenes like this usually find their way to the cutting room floor, which demonstrates the filmmaker's maturity and a newfound ability to smother their darlings when necessary. The ultimate utility of this extensive emphasis on character is the foundation for a living New York that we can't look away from.
2 blocks, like a literal 2 blocks, or 15 minutes, 2 blocks?
These people feel like they could only possibly exist in New York City, which begs the question of whether or not the Safdies could create another setting with the same guile. Regardless, all this contributes to a career that not only holds our gaze, but demands analysis. Their young careers hold countless lessons for new filmmakers. The first lesson is this: keep shooting. They exemplify the anecdote that good luck comes to those who work hard. Benny was still studying at Boston University during pre-pro on The Pleasure of Being Robbed, which, by the way, premiered at Cannes. They made that film with the leftovers from their budget for a Kate Spade ad. Recognize him?
Casey Neistat put me in touch with Andy Spade. The deal was, you make a short film for my wife's company, Kate Spade, and we'll hide all the funding, and we'll say that the short film will cost, this commercial will cost $200,000, but it'll actually only cost $20,000, and we'll take the rest of the money and we'll put it into this first feature of yours. And we had The Pleasure of Being Robbed.
These were lucky breaks that stemmed from diligent work. The moral of their story is that if you want to be a filmmaker, you can. Find what you like, identify your limitations, and in the spirit of every frame of painting, let that become your style. And failure is a non-negotiable part of their story. By making 4 kindred films, the Safdies developed skill and tact. If you want to kick the door down, keep kicking. A decade ago, these guys were making short films at college. Now, they're directing a very cool Adam Sandler, and Martin Scorsese is their bank. Despite recent success, the brothers are still avid students of film, and unsurprisingly, they are hopeless cinephiles. You could watch this entire video of them at Criterion and not recognize a single movie they choose. They're very serious guys, which is at best endearing, and at worst borders on pretension, which seems like a price they're willing to pay.
Shut the fuck up.
The final lesson from the Safdie brothers' still fledgling career is that an overnight Hollywood success is most typically the long-winded result of a consistently second-to-none work ethic. These guys are still down in the trenches making films for a now global audience the same way they did when they were kids. And that's the indispensable crux of what makes them so fascinating.